Ohio State football did everything it was asked of against Indiana this past Saturday. Ohio State was able to effectively run the football. They had 340 rushing yards for 7.9 yards per carry and 3 rushing touchdowns. Mayan Williams exited the game late with an injury. Travion Henderson wasn't available to play, but outside of that, the rushing game was fantastic. And the passing game was fantastic. You even got Kyle McCord in to have some reps, and he was 2 of 2 for 25 yards and had a 79.9 QBR. CJ Stroud went 17 of 28 for 297 yards, 10.6 yards per pass, and he had 5 passing touchdowns, and he had an 83.1 QBR. Ohio State receivers averaged 16.9 yards per reception and had 322 receiving yards for 5 receiving touchdowns, all coming from C.J. Stroud, who has had 9 games where he has had 5 or more passing touchdowns. Video game statistics for a QB who I think will be played often in video games when he is eventually featured in Madden. Absolute NFL QB. I have nothing but praise for this man, C.J. Stroud from California. Nothing but praise for him. And what Ryan Day and Ohio State have done in this game is important, in my opinion. And that's because this game was rainy. There was some wind. The weather conditions were not ideal. It's a noon game against Indiana. And the offense hummed along. 28-7 at halftime. 28-7 in the second half as well, combining for 56-14 for Ohio State. Just absolute fantastic. I don't even know, though, why this was a big noon kickoff game. There's no reason this should have been on big noon kickoff. None. Like, the reason, in my opinion, it was a big noon kickoff game is because of Ohio State. This matchup was known to be a blowout from the beginning, and I just want to state that there's no reason this should have been on big noon kickoff. There just isn't. But outside of that, Ohio State took the lead and never looked back. He never looked back. It was, I think, 21-7 at the end of the first half, not first quarter. Indiana scoring a touchdown right before the first quarter ended. Ohio State scored 7 points in the second quarter before halftime to make it 28-7. And it was just crazy. Mayan Williams averaged nearly 10 yards per carry. Averaging nearly 10 yards per carry. That's, to me, that's mind-blowing. I don't care what defense you're facing. That's mind-blowing. 15 carries for 147 rushing yards, along of 48, 1 rushing touchdown, and it's just insane. And Cameron Babb, a guy was highly recruited but has had injury after injury throughout his career, having a receiving touchdown, huge moment. Huge moment for the Ohio State Buckeye team. Very emotional. It was just an awesome moment seeing him get his first receiving touchdown and his first career touchdown overall. He's been plagued with injury. You could see how much it meant to the team to have Cameron Babb score his first touchdown. So props to you. It'd be awesome, if players watched my videos, but part of me doesn't think that they should, because they should be focused on the game. It's like with coaches. Coaches aren't always paying attention to other teams or paying attention to the media, nor should they. And Ohio State and Michigan are those teams. And I think partially because of that, because of the amazing coaching and players that they have, they're going to be 11-0 when they face off against each other on November 26th. It's just that simple. It really is just that simple. Ohio State's prolific offense, which is second in scoring, is going to take on Michigan's defense, which is first in scoring. These are national numbers. These are not Big Ten numbers. Ohio State has a top 2 offense. And their offense, even though it's second in scoring to Tennessee, I will tell you that it is much more efficient than Tennessee's. They can run better than Tennessee. They can pass better than Tennessee. The difference is, in my opinion, that Ohio State against Northwestern, that game with bad weather and bad execution, that really did screw up their scoring statistics. And it's also the fact that Tennessee, listen, Ohio State has faced, Tennessee's best defense they faced was Georgia, and they really only scored 6 points against them. Ohio State's best defense that they faced is either Notre Dame or Penn State. My money would be on Penn State, and they scored they scored like, what was it? I think 37. Yeah, they scored 37 offensive points, 44 total points on a defense that's number 5 in efficiency, and a team right now in Penn State that is playing top 10 football right now. Not saying they played that way against Michigan or Ohio State, but I do think that Penn State's a top 10 team. This Buckeye squad really is impressive. Michigan is impressive. They're elite, and I cannot wait to see that matchup that they will have against each other on November 26th. I'm going to make a video about that game possibly this week just to give another early preview of it for you Buckeye and Wolverine fans. I'm a part of the Wolverine fan base, as all of you know, and I'm very much excited for what I think will be another game of the century, at least in my eyes. I don't care if it's not number 1 versus number 2. This is the best rivalry in the country, and I think that if you put Georgia along with Michigan and Ohio State, those are the undisputed top 3 teams of the country. They're the only teams in the country with an argument to be number 1, and they're the only 3 teams in the country that I think will win the national championship. Ohio State, Michigan, and Georgia. And 2 of them are going to be facing a part of the same conference, same division, on November 26th. Ohio State's ground game was absolutely dominant in their win. Again, Mayan Williams averaging nearly 10 yards per carry before he was carted off for injury. And Dallin Hayden, he himself had a good game. He had a rushing touchdown, and he had over 100 yards rushing. He had 102 rushing yards, 5.4 yards per carry. Heck, even Marvin Harrison Jr. had 18 rushing yards on 1 carry, and Xavier Johnson had 71 rushing yards. That run by him for a touchdown was insane. The amount of missed tackles, the amount of shiftiness by Xavier Johnson, and everything about that play, the downfield blocking was just fantastic. The ground game was executed perfectly, and you can thank the coaching staff and you can thank the Ohio State players for all of that. You really can. Marvin Harrison Jr. is fantastic at wide receiver. He might be the nation's best, honestly. Marvin Harrison Jr., 969 receiving yards, 11 receiving touchdowns, 16.1 yards per reception on 60 receptions. He had 1 receiving touchdown in this game against Indiana, and he had 135 receiving yards. He's crazy. He is big. He's 6'4", long. He's an NFL wide receiver, and with Jackson Smith-Njigba being injured and not seeing much playing time this year, Marvin Harrison Jr. might be the nation's best wide receiver for this season. And if Jackson Smith-Njigba was healthy, he would be the best wide receiver, or maybe the second best behind Marvin Harrison Jr. So, again, going back to Brian Hartline and the wide receivers Ohio State has, their receiving core is insane. I think Tennessee would be the only other team with a wide receiver core that could even be comparable to this one, and I don't even think there's a comparison. Cedric Tillman and Jalen Hyatt are awesome. Hyatt might even win the award for the Biletnikoff Award for the nation's best wide receiver, but I think that Marvin Harrison Jr. is certainly one of the nation's best, if not the number 1 wide receiver currently. Running back health is becoming a real concern, though, for Ohio State. Henderson nor Williams have been consistently healthy, and against a team like Michigan, who has the best rush defense in the country statistically, I do not know how that is going to work. Ohio State last year had to be one-dimensional against Michigan because they couldn't get the rushing attack going, and that ultimately was a part of why they lost. As the winner of the game has, especially recently, but I think historically, normally, if not always, been the more dominant team on the ground, and that looks to be Michigan right now. Now, again, it's most dominant on the ground when they face each other, not on the season, but without Henderson or Williams, Dallin Hayden is going to have to get some reps against Maryland to get him prepped in case he has to be running back number one against Michigan. And if he has to be running back number one against Michigan, I think Ohio State's chances of winning that game do decrease. Hayden's a good player, but Henderson and Williams are special. I mean, that's one of the best running back duos in the country right there, and none of them can be consistently healthy. The Buckeyes dominated the elements and showed Northwestern was a fluke. That's the most important thing if you're an Ohio State fan, and you should be proud of your team for that. And lastly, Indiana, the Hoosiers just don't have the talent or the coaching to compete in the Big Ten East. And the final point I want to make before ending this video is Indiana football looks to finish 3-9, and that will put Tom Allen right on the hot seat. I predicted them to start out 3-0, and they did, and then I predicted them to finish 0-9 after that 3-0 start, and it looks like they're going to finish that way. And that'll put Tom Allen on the hot seat. They fired their O-line coach. Connor Bazelak didn't play too much, and they just look completely dysfunctional, completely disoriented. They don't look like the Tom Allen teams of 2018, 2019, and 2020. They're easily broken. So I don't know what his future is, but I know that he's probably not going to be fired after this year, but next year's going to be a make or break year for head coach Tom Allen. And that right there is all I have to say for this video. Thank you guys for watching. If you liked it, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, click the notification bell so you can be notified when I go live tonight at 7, and you can be notified when I post future content. And if you're listening to me from Spotify, make sure to follow the channel there. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you around. Bye.